Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life, and welcome to another roundtable for Let's Build an MMO. We have a few spots free available if you'd like to join us. And here's a link here for those of you who are watching via Twitch live right now. So if you've wanted a chance to get something to say something, hop in. For those of you who are new to this project, what it is that a video game development company called NeoJack contacted me and said, hey, we've got this new engine. It's really incredible, built for MMOs. Let's make a game. I'm like, okay, I won't turn that down. So we turned it into you and I working together to build this game via these shows. The developers are watching right now. They sometimes message me while we're talking to clarify things, but otherwise they're actually not invited onto the show. And the reason is that this is our MMO. We don't want them to taint our ideas that we have about it with their preconceived conceptions about what the game should be. And what's happened from that is that we've come up with some really incredible things, and things that are so far outside of the box that nobody has ever done it before in an MMO. And the NeoJack guys have come back to me and said, you know what? We think we can do that. And we're actually about to see a bunch of that is that next week? No, another week from now, August 12th, we are going to see a big kickoff event, and there's going to be a whole lot of stuff presented that you and I have asked for in this game. So please do join us if you're watching live, and get your 2 cents worth in, and maybe that 2 cents will show up in the game. So today's subject, governance. Sounds really boring, doesn't it? But what it really has to do with is, we talk about these player-run towns and everything, and how do we exert influence over these towns? How can the towns work together, all the people who live in the town, as a group to act as one unit, separate from something like guilds, and to wield influence over the community? And the community being, everybody that's in there and doing things like, okay, we need improved roads, or we need guards, or we need, I don't know, fresh water piped in? I don't know. Sewage on the way out? I don't know. So, these are all things up for discussion. This also includes guilds and other groups, whether it be a small pickup group or some larger organizations. And then we'll also get into alliances and maybe even sovereignty. So, welcome, guys. Evil, glad you could make it.
Of course.
Yes, I'm not sure what to say about what you're doing to that dog.
Wasn't my dog. Just a video I found.
Yes, well, pretty cute there. That dog, that ball is just a little bit too big for that dog.
But everybody's laughing, so it's all good.
Yeah. And then we have William here with us as well. Hello, William.
Hello.
William, you've been on the show a couple other times, and welcome back. And okay. Not very many people here today. I think that this subject is not very exciting to a lot of people. But I think it's very, very necessary at the same time for building community and having a well-rounded community. What are you guys' thoughts on? Let's start with towns.
I think I should have one, you should have one, and he should have one. Everybody can come to us.
I see, Godfather.
Well, if nobody wants to come to this one and put in their 2 cents, might as well take advantage of it.
Absolutely. So, okay, so my vision for towns is that it would be something like real world, where someone could be elected, and they live within the town. And that that person who is elected would get some extra controls for things like taxes on all the vendors and maybe other things. I don't know if we could make the roads nicer or light posts or whatever. I don't know. That sounds kind of interesting though. And then they are able to put those taxes toward community projects. Community projects could be something as like protection, and as simple as guards, or maybe I don't know, maybe some sort of towers, for alerting the population when a horde is coming, or for shooting arrows down at the approaching horde. I don't know, city walls, stuff like that. And that the community would have the power to add other land to their city or whatnot, by default, in the fact that maybe their neighbors have both joined in with the city or something like that. And it should probably all be connected. What does that spark for you guys?
Well, I think it depends a lot on I think with the initial governance, it should be NPC. Where the first people to show up to in the game start off in the starter town with the ability to build houses and stuff. Maybe get as time progresses in an area becomes a reasonable size, entity. They have to expand the town or whatever. Maybe have it so that somebody gets elected to like a board of regents or something that has a say in the where the money goes. But I think for the initial NPC, it should be like, a baron or a lord or a king or something. And then from there, no, not for the players, for the initial NPC space. And then they can go out and found their own towns. That way you're starting off from just a couple points in the game, and as the game develops, more towns develop, and that's where the player controls come in. And maybe not even necessarily have it elected, maybe have it, I am the king of this kingdom,
Oh, like the True Blood Wolves, you got to fight for dominance.
Well, that or if I go out and I build a castle in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden I got people wanting to hang around my castle and not go in the dungeon and get killed, and traders and stuff like that. Well, a town's going to spring up around that. They're going to be supplying people and doing stuff, and I don't necessarily want to kill the vendors that are sitting outside the dungeon. I want them to supply the players with equipment and stuff, because it'll end up in my dungeon anyway.
Yeah.
But in the same token, when you take and have support characters around you, like NPCs or PCs, doing supplies of stuff or farming or harvesting or whatever, that adds to your control over an area. Because there's two aspects to this. There's the political aspect, where you have a title and you've been elected, or you've taken over, or you're the packmaster or something like that. And then you have the actual control of the game space in that in that region.
Maybe a city could initially start to form by, my vision of how this works is that, when we first pop into the game, I don't even know that there would be, I suppose there'd be some NPCs around, but I don't even know if they're going to have houses or whatnot. And that, we're going to, set aside blocks of land that we want to use for whatever, but that naturally communities will form in different places. And that, maybe when there are, 20 or so landowners, that their land all connects together, that they're offered an opportunity to, form a town or something. And just by default, when you have a certain concentration of people living near each other, and then maybe the largest landowner is offered the
Title.
is offered the title to start with, but then after that it can go up for elections if enough of the owners in the area decide that they want to put it up for election.
Yeah.
So I would say that if 50% of them wanted to put it up for an election, that would, maybe be, or 60% or something like that. Maybe that would be a turning point where an election begins to happen.
Or maybe towns are owned by guilds, so that the guild actually owns a town. So basically, the person in charge of the guild would actually be running the town. So if you want to be part of a town, you just sort of have, say, 5 or 6 people together. That forms a village, and maybe if it gets above 20, that turns into a town, and so on. So maybe it's
above 100, it turns into a city.
Yeah, and then the centre of that, it'll be the guild hall of some sort, which originally wouldn't exist, but once, say, a guild has built it up on guild-owned land, so it's not individual-owned land, it's guild-owned land. That way, guilds pay for land use as well as, say, individuals. And then that can basically be the centre of these villages and towns and such. So once you get 20 people, maybe your guild hall could then be upgraded to look fancier and better.
Yeah, that could be too. That automatically the roads and the streets and everything start to look nicer based upon the population.
I had an idea yesterday after the chat about once sort of communities build up, the way information is spread, as we discussed, sort of, say, a dungeon sprung up and 20 people died, there'll be an announcement saying, 20 people died at this dungeon, you should go and take a look at it. Maybe if you have, say, 20 houses, these random uninteractable...
Town criers.
Well, yeah, not quite town criers, but just townspeople appear. You can't interact with them, but sort of when you're walking past them, they'll start chatting to each other, and you overhear the conversation they have, which sort of relays information or rumours that they have heard throughout the game. One way to sort of spread the news around the world.
That would be interesting. That would be a interesting drop of information, because you want everything in the environment to be interactive, and you want you want it to have some sort of meaning, not necessarily advancing your character, but maybe advancing the storyline or the world in general.
Adding to the lore.
Adding to the lore. The one thing I think for governance there should be multiple. For governance, I think there should be multiple types of governance that you can achieve, whether it be elections or taking over an area, or a guild basically saying all our members are settling this area and it's going to be a guild town, or because you're going to attract players of other professions when you form a town. You're going to get somebody that's going to be a blacksmith, and you're going to get somebody who's going to do woodworking or furniture building, and people will naturally form their own towns. Maybe somebody brings in a bunch of NPCs because they have cash to do that, and you got to provide housing for those NPCs, so maybe their slums grow up or something. So but I think that there should be something that causes people to want to go to an area. For instance, a castle or a guild house or something, and just let it form naturally. Whatever the players end up. I want an open mechanic as far as that's concerned. I don't want to be trapped by you can only be a king, or you can only have a guild town or something like that. I think we should start with an NPC ruled town, like a cluster of them, where there's a couple towns where the players can start off at, and then from there the world just builds itself. Goes back into player-generated content, and the devs can throw in enough random stuff happening to just sit back and watch the chaos,
I'll
because
just drop an orc here and there.
or a horde of them.
I know that's what you mean, but that's what I envisioned.
Yeah.
Plunk, plunk, plunk.
Oh dear, how did I get here? I'm
Yeah,
not supposed to be in this area.
I know.
Run away, run away. Oh, there's my horde.
It definitely should be NCP towns. I mean, even if it's just, say, 5 or 6 starter towns where people sort of start in the world, where they sort of first log in, or they've come from Tutorial Island, where they've then travelled to these various towns. I mean, they're just tiny little towns with a few shops here and there where you can sell stuff to the NCPs, as we discussed before.
I think that is a very appropriate
Start.
for a start, because there's resources, and as the players start to provide these resources, the NPCs get put out of business or move on or just disappear and
Eaten by orcs.
Eaten by orcs, yes.
That randomly appear in their shop.
I know. Oh, the news says another merchant was eaten by an orc. As the population grows, we become more tasty.
Yeah.
A lot of this is still needed, though, for the new people starting the game. So NCP should still be there for the new people. It just, for the more advanced people, they just wouldn't go and visit them because there's nothing for them. But for the new people starting off, they still would be needed throughout pretty much the whole length of the game.
Yeah, we can't forget about the players who are starting, say, a year into the game.
Yeah.
Because we need them and want them, and certainly can't forget about them.
However,
I don't think any NCP should disappear because, say, new people starting, they'll always need them. They'll always need somewhere to go back to be safe. Even if it's, say, you're sort of wandering around for 5-6 hours, so you can go back to town to log off to be safe. So you know you're safe when you log in, rather than end up somewhere where you sort of end up in someone else's town as soon as you log in, so they can kill you quite easily.
well, there should also be like an aspect of this where I think NPCs should be put out of business as far as business goes, or be forced to move their business because there's too much competition. I don't have a problem with that. I think the initial
we need somebody there to sell the initial weapon, the initial axe, that stuff there, and maybe players will do that, but who can guarantee that players will always offer that?
Well, maybe new adventurers should start off like as militia members or something like that. Like before you were an adventurer, you got some military training or some training in some profession that basically sets you up with some basic items.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is, these items will probably be destroyed or dropped if you
relatively
like
quickly.
to drop them. So I think there should always be places where you can go along, and even free of charge or even for minimal cost, to pick up these basic items and sell items to make some money.
Either that, or every time you die, you appear with an axe. You get an axe again. You get a
part of your
shovel or
resurrection
whatever.
call. Your free ship.
yeah, kind of like that. It's
got
not
resurrected.
it's not very powerful or anything. There's a lot better stuff you could use, but if you don't have anything, you have the tools to create something.
Yeah.
And get yourself back on your feet again.
Now, I think also that because we had discussed the possibility of entire towns like being, just abandoned. I think that sovereignty of an area should be transferable via a couple different mechanics, so that people can lose control of this if they stop playing. Like if I become king, all of a sudden the king's sitting in his hall with his hair graying and his eyes all like glazed over because of the evil wizard next to him, and eventually somebody comes along and just basically comes in and says, "Oh, nope, you're not king anymore." There should be some sort of mechanic for that, for the purposes of because
if 60% of the town members want to a new vote, then
Yeah.
it goes up for a vote. And if the person is absentee, then he's not there to campaign. He's not there to vote for anybody and
Yeah.
everything, and he'll get replaced.
A revolution.
It could be, or everybody could say, he's just on vacation. You guys quit it. He'll be back. And vote him back in again. But it's up to them.
But at least his lockboxes won't disappear.
Well, who knows if they'll... Yeah, I know.
I think what you do with that is you'll get 50 people joining a guild, and then as malicious, and then just taking over because they've suddenly joined. They're literally going from guild to guild, taking over these guilds just because they keep joining. So, I've got 30 friends that want to join, and then you realise, oh, hang a minute, 30 people is actually 60%, and suddenly these 30 people take over your area, take all your stuff, and then move on to the next guild and take that lot.
Well,
and maybe guilds shouldn't be the governing body. Maybe guilds can make a town and be both at the same time. But maybe it really, the only people that can be included are town members.
they
So
have
you
a
have to buy
house
land. And maybe the squares of land you have is how many votes you get.
there.
No, I'm serious.
Pay to win almost.
Well, but at the same time, if I own 25% of the city, and I'm, maybe I should get 25% of the vote. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that is getting to almost pay to win. So you can go along and buy up 60% of the land that's owned in that town, and then buy the town, and then move on to the next one. You can almost literally buy the whole game up.
Yeah, but you do have a limit. I mean, this could run into thousands of real dollars.
Some people are mad.
Well, that's fine.
I
But
do.
what happens? What happens after their property degrades because they've moved on to the next town? Or the town continues to grow. They own 60% of the land today, but if there's a mechanic where the town can continue to expand around, and expands around them, maybe their percentage of the town dwindles over time, and that
This is
10%
true.
difference. I mean, 10%. The really pissed off people from the last guild town move into this guild town, and then they're like, "Oh no, you're done." That it becomes a matter of how much do you really want to invest in this game, and if somebody wants to come in with lots of money and waste it doing stuff like this, it's all good for the developer because he's making money.
On that same point, I can totally see that there's a town there, and somebody comes in and buys a huge block of land that connects with it, and so that block, and then chooses to opt that block of land into the town system, like annexation of this, and then that gives them power in the town. Now, with that said, maybe that gives them a large vote in the town, but at the same time, okay, so somebody comes in and gets a large vote in the town, and you don't like what they're doing or whatever, you have a couple of choices. You can move, or you can rally the people against them, so I don't know. I see it as a mechanic that maybe even there might be a cry for help. This person is trying to take over our town, and other people move into the town, move their land to connect with it and make it bigger. And the person who bought this huge lot, their percentage dwindles down.
Or there's also a mechanic you could add, which would percentage of votes would also include the age that you've been in the town. So the longer you've been in the town, the more votes you get.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Seniority
That will
slash
save that.
you have a seniority slash townie advantage.
Yeah, so your square times, times months.
Number of months.
That you've owned it, or whatever. And so everybody, if they stay in the town, everybody will raise equally. A newcomer would have to spend time in there and to get a higher vote and hope that other people move out. And they wouldn't be able to take over right away. It would make it a long-term deal, or they would have to buy so much land that that they might be crazy.
Well, the thing is, you want people. I think you want people to be crazy in the game.
I want
You want
people to
them-
do things that we never expected. I want to
Yeah.
be surprised, and that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And there's going to be people that bitch about somebody doing something, no matter what you do. As long as the developers can stay in the background and not be seen with what they do, and not say anything about, this is player run. If you don't like what the player is doing, do something about it. We're setting up the mechanic. Here's how it works. If there's a major change in the mechanic, we may tell you, but if we do anything, it's going to be tweaks, and you're not going to see it. Because if something isn't broken, if it's just working the way it's supposed to be working, I don't think it should be messed with. That's one of the things that happens in EVE that annoys the crap out of everybody. They hit everything with the Nerf bat, and then they're like, oh no, we nerfed it too much, and we raise it back up. And players are being driven by the developers changing the system as opposed to the players changing the system.
Right.
If this is an open world, let's make it a completely open world, not just kind of open.
I do think that there does need to be some sort of controls, though, and adjustments as necessary, but really try and resist changing too far.
Yeah. Or changing in a manner that's just simply everybody. I mean, if something is clearly broken in the sense that it gives somebody overwhelming advantages in the game immediately and forever, something like that needs to be changed. Or if something's just not working right, a mechanic's not working, fix it. But if this is an open world and players can move on or stay or rally the troops to come in and build houses all around this idiot and overwhelm him with the masses, then let them. Because idiots get bored and move on.
Yeah, they do. And also maybe there'd be some advantages to being in a town or whatever that, that there's a lot of traffic going through the town and that the tax rate is low, and the governing body keeps it low to attract more people in, and that could thus, attract more owners in and, dilute this person who buys a huge spot of land. And I do think too, Evil, what you mentioned about it sounds like you are going to build yourself a castle from
Skippy.
Yeah, and
it's not for the control of the area either. It's just because I want a castle.
Right. I want a fabulous place too, but I'm not sure how much I can afford. And but if you are, a castle might be a centerpiece in many ways for many towns.
Yep.
And so, I don't know. I wonder if we have to think about urban sprawl.
Possibly. But we've discussed the mechanics of like houses disintegrating over time unless you invest some money into them or have an NPC that takes care of them, a caretaker.
Right.
And there will be people who do something like build a house and then never play the game again, but they have X amount of money tied up in the NPC that's maintaining the house, and it'll never change. And yeah, it's kind of like urban sprawl, but then you just have background. It's player created content, and it just sticks around until it runs out of cash.
Yeah. And then there's a land grab when it becomes available.
Yeah.
And someone may not get the entire piece of property, and so you may end up with two people splitting the property, and so they, instead of building bigger, they build taller.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
just like mini cities.
And I like the organicness of it. Because if you have like a developed town, they'll take and work with whatever they think is their best ideas and just run with it. And it gets very stale after a while.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the other thing.
One that's open and flowing and that changes as you go. You come back to town. It's just like real life. I
Yeah.
go back to my hometown and look at those new buildings. You know, or where did that one go? It's just an empty lot now.
Yeah.
So
The town I live in just rebuilt half of the downtown area. It's only like a few blocks, but still, it's like a substantial difference in the character of the town. And it only took them a year. They put up like 6 buildings in a year,
wow.
and completely changed the nature of the town. They redid roads and everything,
Hmm.
and it's just one of those deals where, leave it up to the players to do that. That way, the developers can focus on the game engine and adding, pushing the storyline, which I think is where they add their most value.
Hmm. I also was just thinking of, in normal society, what happens in these towns as they get bigger is that the town will condemn certain properties and then take them over and then build community places there, or parks or whatever. And part of the taxes that are used for this, that are collected, could be used in a pool that allows the governing body to auto buy a property that becomes available within a certain radius of the center, so that land could be used with the tax money to build a town hall or a community center or whatever, so that you still keep things centralized and people together, and but then it's run by the governing body, and hopefully we can make some sort of way where the person who's governing can't just take the money and run.
Yeah. Have like an exchequer or something that.
Well, or it can only be spent in very certain ways, like community-owned land, and then whoever is the new leader or whatnot has control over this community-owned land after that, and maybe they want to tear down the community center and put in a park because that's what their passion is. Okay, but they're in control of that at that point.
Maybe for derelict lands, have it like a set amount of time after it runs out of cash for maintenance and taxes. Have it set so that it goes up. It becomes temporarily. It becomes the property of the city, the sovereign of the area. And
then maybe a week later, if they don't do anything, it goes open to the public or something.
Well, no.
Oh.
The town, whoever's leading the town, can make a choice between paying for the upkeep of the property, as in like we're going to keep this as city land, and we're going to pay somebody to. Well, we may destroy the house or keep the house or whatever, but we're going to hold on to the property, and we'll do something with it later, and have some sort of upkeep cost for that. So it's not just somebody as mayor buying up all the derelict buildings. Force them to think about it, and then instead of having people just grabbing the land and surveying and grabbing the land, set up the land for a sheriff's sale. So you have a bidding process.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun to be there with all your neighbors and bidding? Oh, I'll pay more. Oh, I'll pay more.
Well, this way you don't have you have whoever's in charge of the town has to make a decision on whether they want to sit on the land and pay for its maintenance, or whether they want to get the money out of the land immediately and sell it. That way you have a very organized transfer of property, so you don't have people sitting there surrounding it waiting for the land to disintegrate so they can pounce on it.
But that's fun.
Yes, it's fun, and if you want to set the town up that way, but I mean, as a mechanic, a general mechanic, you can do it either way. I don't know. But I'm saying that there will be people that will want a more organized way, and this way it makes sense. If somebody wants to sit on the land, they can sit on the land. If the leadership wants to sell it, you have a very clear, easy transfer of the title. Right. And whoever pays the most, and this also counts as a money sink for the players in the game, so that they actually have to think really hard about what they do with their cash.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I really want to bid this property up to this level? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you might get an obscene price for it, or nobody will want it, and they'll get a really low price for it.
Right.
You know, it's so location matters, size of the parcel will matter, whether there's a house on it still will matter, and you know, people may want to level the house and expand their house, or they'll keep the house and do the maintenance to bring it back up to quote unquote code or usability and rent it out or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
make the possibility, make it so there's a clear system for transfer, and not necessarily have it a single system, maybe have several systems, so you can
Yeah.
like, you know,
So you can
it's
make
abandoned.
choices.
Yeah, and that way you're, as a leadership, you're not just trapped in you have to do a share of sale. You can
Mhm.
say it's a free for all in my town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
First
people
person
who
to grab
want-
it gets it, or
yeah.
whatever. Or
So
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, notice the basic theme is variability here.
Mm-hmm.
That way we're not trapped into just one little genre, because the reality of it is, in medieval times, they built whatever they could build wherever they could build it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It didn't have to make sense or match the neighborhood.
Right. True. True. It was whoever had power.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the ability to do something.
Yeah. So okay, we've. It sounds like all that there's enough info there for a good start-off point for towns. What about guilds?
Well, my idea would be guilds would run the towns, and as governors, sort of as what we discussed before. Guild hall will be the centre of town. You can, I'd hope you could join as many guilds you wanted, and then have one primary guild as your main guild, and you can sort of nominate that as your primary guild.
That's
based on
interesting.
where you
Interesting.
live.
Being a member of multiple guilds, I'd never thought of that before.
So therefore, you can actually say you can travel long distances, do lots of farming for minerals and whatever, long way away from home. Use a local guild that you've joined or been invited to. Use all those materials, produce stuff, maybe sell it there, or then move the produced stuff back home, rather than having to move all the materials back home to produce it. You can produce it and use their equipment, as it were, elsewhere, or their
Mhm.
markets.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you know, I can tell you for myself, I'm not so interested in a guild running my town, and I might choose to just be all off on my own. And I certainly wouldn't want to be annexed by a guild, because I may not believe in their philosophy. Because guilds to me are war or conflict, and a town mayor is like community. You know, guilds can be community as well, and you know, maybe the town can elect to be a guild-based town, or a you know, a which is more of a is the right word oligarchy, or
Yes.
you know, that you know, that it's run that way, whereas a mayor-based town is more democratic, and
That's a good idea,
people
yeah.
can choose to be in either.
Yeah, that sounds very good. That.
But I also would be very upset if my town that I'd put a lot of time and effort into was you know, democratic based, turned into being run by a guild. It's just like a military coup, you know. Maybe that's all part of it. Maybe then I have to work against the guild, even though I'm one of them.
Well, you don't necessarily have to be part of the guild to be in the town. I mean, just because you're annexed doesn't mean you've joined.
But it does
I
does
mean-
mean that you know, maybe it means that guild wars are going to happen at my front doorstep and everything, that we're going to be
Possibly.
invaded by other guilds. You know, maybe that is awesome. I suppose it'd be quite a great spectator. You know, I'll be like, I'm going to build a house like I'm in New Orleans, and I'm going to have my little balcony on the second story, and I'm going to sit out there on a chair, smoke my cigarette, and watch all the carnage below. With my drink, having a good time. And if they throw me enough beads, I'll flash them. But
Yeah, I definitely think there should be ideas where if loads of people suddenly turn up in your area and start building right the way around you, you can not opt to be in the town. So maybe town linked property has some sort of discount. So if you are actually wanting to sort of stay away from a town, not belong to a town, then that can be an option rather than to actually be linked to a town. So maybe if you're in a town, you get a slight discount on your land prices, or maybe something else. So therefore, you don't have to be in the town. Because I know I'd certainly want like a farming area where you're not part of a town, you're at your own little property.
You're in a county.
So your own property, you run yourself, and then even if loads of people suddenly turn up around you, they don't automatically get you involved in the town, then be able to take your area. You can sort of just sit there, and that's it, and the town runs around you, as it were.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the town having pockets of non-compliance within it, because there may be issues where the town has resources that are given to everybody that they could benefit just by the sheer fact of their location, and not necessarily like break on taxes or anything else like that.
Well, maybe make it one of those deals where they have to expand completely around you before they can claim the land on the other side of you.
Well, that's what I was thinking about annexation and everything, and I we've all heard news stories of people getting annexed and not wanting to be a part of the city. They liked their county structure that they had before, and but it happens because the city is expanding, and I think that if everybody around you opts to become part of the city, that you should automatically get opted in, that you should be annexed automatically, whether you like it or not. And that could be a problem. But
It also be an economic driver too.
Well, it can be, and it also allows the community to make decisions, because then you become part of the community, and so maybe the resources on your land then also help the stuff. Like, let's say I own a big vendor mall and I have a whole bunch of stuff there. Let's talk about like Indian casinos that are within towns and everything, but they don't pay taxes to the town. And everything. I think that sure they have their place, but I don't necessarily know that I want that to have a pocket of big commerce that's independent and they're keeping it selfishly. It should be part of the community.
Maybe we could make it a matter of what mechanic they use to take over the area, because like I said, there's governance and there's control. If you don't control an area, if you don't have the soldiers to keep an area safe, you're not going to be able to govern it. So there's going to be a cost involved if somebody wants to move in and take over an area. And if they can't maintain their control via like guards or something like that, it becomes much more difficult to govern an area. I mean, there could be that mechanic involved. I mean, we're talking general mechanics here. At the end of the day, all we're talking is general mechanics, not specifics. And if you don't want to be part of a town, maybe there's some mechanic that can be placed in the way of other people. Because I know, like, I don't know about Florida, but I know in Ohio, if you are part of a town, you can leave the jurisdiction. You can file paperwork and say, I don't want to be part of your town anymore. I don't know what I want to be returned to the township.
The problem though is that all your neighbors are all paying for the maintenance of the street out front, and the street lights and everything, and it becomes an unequal, unfair situation. I originally grew up in Portland, Oregon, and something really interesting happened there. It's I think it's the only city within a city in the United States. We have the city of Maywood Park that is completely surrounded by the city of Portland, and they refused to be annexed as the city grew. And so they have like 250 homes in there, and they just decided to stay their own thing. They have their own mayor and everything, and they're independent. But they also do all of their own streets and street lights and all of that. So,
Yeah, it's like City of London as well.
mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
same thing. They're based inside the city walls. Is their own town. They've got their own laws. They've got their own mayor. They've got their own everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only like there's 11,000 people in the city of London,
Mm-hmm.
where London is huge.
And maybe that can work out just fine, but I really would want to put pressure on, being one community, not two communities at conflict with each other.
Well, that's not necessarily in conflict with each other.
I know it's not necessarily at conflict with each other, but there is an initial conflict. If we surround you and you don't want to be a part of us, then there's a conflict.
Well, that can either just be political people posturing on one side of the street and the other, or it could turn into warfare, at which point the area gets destroyed and whoever wins wins. I mean, it could make it a mechanic where it's open for the players to decide these things. Because
Mm-hmm.
smart players and wise players and more mature players will decide what's in their own best interest, and they'll work something out. And you see this a lot in like EVE with the larger alliances that have been around for a long time. They'll sit, the leadership of both alliances will say, well, we're all blue to each other, let's do a soft reset and just have some wars, and not necessarily try to take land or space. Just then you have other times when it's all out conflict. But more often than not, things are resolved with just by talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea of letting the players decide the formation of the world and how it eventually develops is a good mechanic to have in place. And
I
yeah, you might not like the results all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You may hate the results.
I'll only like 80% of them, just like the general public.
Yeah. and what'll eventually happen is you'll either stick around and fight it out, or have some sort of backstabbing carnage of political fallout, or you'll leave
Hmm?
and find new places to build a town or a castle.
People do that all the time in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at California.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we touched on guilds just a little bit, and we ended up back at towns, guilds. Should we just kick this off as a general, guild management system, or
I don't like the fact of it being too guild heavy. I think there should be a very clear defined choice of whether you want to do that side of it, or do the more political side, I guess you'd call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or-
I don't know which I want. I mean, I enjoy being in a clan in one game I'm playing, but that doesn't put me at risk of anybody else just because I'm a member. Maybe there should be guilds and there should be trade organizations. A farmers union.
Maybe a couple different levels of organization that's not necessarily a linear upgrade, but a horizontal spread of different possible organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a
being able to
guild.
be in multiple.
Yeah, being able to be in multiple. I think they should have their own characteristics, and they should be able to set standings against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if, for instance, you're a member of like 3 or 4 guilds, and 2 of those guilds change their standings to each other, you're going to have to take a side.
Yeah, you're going to have to choose one or the other, huh?
You're going to have to choose, and this is going to dramatically change the outcome of people's choices on whether or not those guilds actually get into a fight. Because if there's a bunch of people from 2 guilds, I really like the idea of being able to join multiple guilds. If there's a bunch of people that are in 2 guilds, and one of them loses half its members to the other, and they're like a quarter of the size, they're going to back off and say, okay, whatever, you win.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if they split down the middle, well, there might be a conflict there. You know, and this, maybe have like player trade organizations, like caravan groups that go around, or adventuring associations of some
That would
sort.
be really interesting if players could form their own associations or unions, and then when they have enough members, that they're able to choose some sort of benefit for the group and some sort of recompensation for the group. And so if they want to be a farmer union, then it might be some sort of tax, but at the same time then they get power to
Grow better
grow better crops, or to influence prices a little bit more, or they get, because they're in this farmers union, they get subsidized transportation. The transportation is a little bit cheaper, so they can get their stuff to further away markets where they can get better prices.
That way people are actually thinking about where they join and why they join. There's some benefit cost. And when it comes to deciding between memberships of organizations, that will definitely affect their choices.
I could see being in multiples, but then you get tax rates that are so high if you're paying taxes to all of them, that it might not be worth it. So you would carefully choose what organizations you're a member of.
Exactly. And it'll be self-limiting.
Maybe you can join unlimited guilds, but say 3 organisations or unions, and 2 or 3 townships, as it were. So maybe have multiple groupings under different names, with different benefits, all with the sort of same hierarchy, but maybe named differently. So yeah, joining a guild will be, you could use the guild items. Township, you'll get reduced taxes in that town. Unions, you'll get better crops or things like that. So maybe it can be sort of 3 or 4 types of groups you could join with different benefits, different advantages for each one, with sort of similar hierarchies. So you have a leader, you have say 5 or 6 classes below, with different options they can actually do and perform in the group.
I want to be a member of the Thieves Guild so that I can pick your pocket better.
I think I'm probably the only one here that only thinks we should be in one guild and one organisation, because I think that a guild is sort of what defines your character. So being in multiple ones just means you're just all round, because you could be in a guild which has various different specializations and then just be able to swap over occasionally to your primary guild, which might do one thing over the other. Whereas if you're forced to be in one, and you're forced to be in one organization, you can work your way up in the organization or in that guild to influence it the way that is best for your character build and how you're defining your gameplay.
Maybe there could be something that could be best of both worlds, that if you're a member of multiple, that you're not eligible for higher ranks in any of them. You're just a member.
Yeah, that could work.
Or if there's a cost to being in the guild, like a guild fee or a tax or something, preferably, I think it should be fees over taxes. In something like EVE, where your income is visible via computer systems, it makes sense to do a tax. But I think if you're going to be a member of a guild, I think there should be some sort of cost. And whether it's 1,000 gold a month or a year or whatever, by varying the costs on these things, it's going to automatically limit the number of organizations you join. And if there are organizations that could come into conflict, you're going to probably basically decide between them ahead of time. I don't think it should be limited. Maybe you get I like the idea of maybe only being able to achieve rank if you're only in that organization.
That might be
Because
that guild might make that decision too.
yeah, or have it as an option for their charter or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're running a guild, you'd only have 5 or 6 people you trust at a high level. The rest of them
Yeah.
would be members or even below that, you see. So, I mean, that's sort of self-regulating, I think.
Especially if the guild runs a town.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the end, I think having multiple guilds actually forms large communities across the world, rather than just having a local guild and everyone sort of working there. If you actually have sort of affiliations or links to guilds elsewhere, therefore you tend to travel around a bit more, have more interaction with other communities and more people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what sort of the idea, I think, is multiple guilds, so you actually have bigger communities and sort of more communities.
How about we're starting to get run out of time here, but I want to touch on alliances. These organizations, should they be able to form alliances to kind of be known as a bigger collective body working together?
I like the idea of having like a tiered governance system. So you could have a bunch of towns where all the leaders decide to group together, or all the guilds where guilds decide they want to group together, and then you'd naturally make sort of like continents, I guess, and then they might elect a leader. So it could work all the way down, and it might give a new player in, even if they come in later after all this has been developed, they can start off by winning votes by starting their own town, and then earning their way up through impressing people or doing good for the world or the community that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Or
So
getting
help out
deep
with
enough.
trade routes.
Or getting deep enough pockets, maybe.
Ooh, trade routes. I like that idea. The trade routes between two towns or whatever. And so by virtue of that alliance between the two towns, the transportation becomes cheaper or safer or some benefit to it.
Yeah.
Or quicker.
Give it the possibility of towns that are close by to each other combining. Becoming
that's-
one large town.
That's another thing that I was thinking too. Is that's a little bit more than alliance. That's
Country building.
that would be interesting. Boy, someplace could become big and powerful. You know, they get enough. They end up owning a quarter of all the land in the world or something like that.
That's possible, but yet again, there's a level of control you have to deal with too.
Yeah.
Because the bigger you are, the more likely it is you're going to attract people that don't like you.
Right. Mm-hmm. When you're on top, everybody wants to knock you down. When you're in second place, only 10% of the people notice you. So, yeah. Okay, well, any final thoughts on this, guys?
I'm pretty well thought out.
Yeah, okay.
Come on,
Well,
Frank, you going to say anything?
I know Frank joined us and hasn't said a word.
He's greatly amused.
He's just here to present us with his good looks.
Yeah. No, I've never been able to attend one of these before, so I'm behind. But the level of complication you guys are talking about doesn't sound like anything I can comment on. So better just to keep my mouth shut.
I see. Well, thanks for joining us, Frank. You'll have to have a day off more often.
Yeah.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you for joining us, and this is the end of this episode. We have one more episode next Thursday that will be live here, same time, and next Thursday we are going to be discussing combat, and so bring your weapons and your armor. And be ready for a little verbal combat at least. And then after that, we're the following Monday, we are full on into the Kickstarter, and I think there's going to be something going on every single day through the entire Kickstarter. and boy, am I going to be tired.
Is that the day you lose your sword?
That's the day I lose my sword. Actually, and I'll mention that, so we're giving away the sword for subscribers on YouTube, and I filmed today. It's going to go up in a couple of days. The video, YouTube completely changed the system on how you can view your subscribers, totally obliterating the way we used to choose people. And so I got a video going up on a new way to select the winner, and that'll be up in just a couple of days. So, but we are talking about whether or not we can give away some cool items like that for this game right here that we're talking about. And so we'll see if anything like that comes to fruition. So.
And in advance, Marky, thanks for picking me for winning the sword.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Just make sure you're subscribed. So,
Oh, yeah, will do.
okay, well, thank you, everybody. That is it for today, and see you all next time.
Later.
That's it.
Bye.